In this video, I'll show you how to set up a Subversion workspace and how to use the files in Windows Explorer to save your work to a central repository. Now, the first thing we need, three things. You need to be on a computer with U drive access. So if you go into this PC or my computer, depending on Windows versions, you should have a drive called U. This is the AVE server. If this doesn't show up, you can talk to me or Eric and we can map it. Now, this will only be on the lab PCs. It won't be in Bronson Hall or anywhere else. It is just the game development lab and then the classroom on the opposite side of the building. Second, you need TortoiseSVN. The way you check, open the folder, you right click, and you should have these options, TortoiseSVN and SVN checkout. If those are there, it's installed and you're good to go. If not, you're going to have to talk to Eric so he can install it. Third thing you need, space for a working copy. You can use the hard drives of the computer you're on, but it won't be portable, it won't be backed up, and it could be deleted anytime. I'd recommend using a portable hard drive or a flash drive. Right now, with no assets, the project is a little over a gigabyte, so get at least an 8 gig flash drive. I don't think you can buy anything smaller these days, but you just need some place to put your files because you're going to make your own local copy of the repository. Now, first things first, you need to set up your local copy. So I'm using a dummy repository on my home computer. In reality, you're going to be using the repository on the U drive. Oh, which brings me to this, reminds me of this point. Unreal Engine will not open projects on the U drive, so your local copy cannot be on the U drive. Just pick somewhere else. Now, as I was saying, for making your local copy, you make a folder somewhere where you can save it. Go into the folder, right click, and go down to this option, SVN checkout. Now it's going to ask you for two main things here. It's going to ask you where the repository is and where you want your local copy to be. This local copy should just be the folder you're in. So dummy B, dummy B. Now this line here, this is the address for my dummy repository. What you're going to use for the actual project will be this address right here. This is the location on the U drive of our SVN repository. So file, colon, 3 slashes, this is 3 slashes, not the usual 2, U drive, DA490, SVN repo. So enter the repository address here. These options should be left at their default and just press OK. Now what's happening right now, TortoiseSVN is going to the repository and copying every file over to your local workspace. With the U drive internet speeds and the wired speeds there, this could take about 10 minutes. But on my computer, since there's not really much here, and it's from one folder to the next, it's very fast. Now at the bottom, it'll show completed, and it will show you the revision number. This revision number is the number of times the server has been changed. So the initial server creation is revision 1. So this has had a few changes. And the local one, the actual project one, should have a few changes by now. Press OK. And these icon overlays will take a minute to update. But if we refresh, now we see this green check mark. The green check mark means that as far as Tortoise can tell, this workspace is synced up with the server. So now if we go in here, that was an empty folder a minute ago. Now we have these subfolders, and this will go all the way into a Unreal project. Now working with the Unreal will be a different video because that takes a little more setup and my recording can't switch between things that easily. So any of these folders, oh, we actually have some files in here already. So what is this? Designs for the shuttle, the Osprey. And most of these are empty still. So first thing you're going to want to know now that you have your local copy, how do you add files? If you're creating a new file from scratch, like a text file, for example, do it the same way you usually do. You can open Notepad, or if you're doing Word files, open Word. However you usually make files, just create a file. You just need to make something. And something needs to have something interesting in it. Otherwise it wouldn't be worth saving. Save. So now I have this file, something, with something interesting in it. You can laugh or not. But right now, it's in this folder, in this Workspace B, dummy B. If I go into dummy A, which is another local copy, it's not there. You can't browse in the repository, and you guys don't need to be messing with the central one, just in case anything gets messed up, but it won't be there either. That is completely different format. So right now we have a folder, but it's not added to the server. So what we have to do is right click on the file, go down to TortoiseSVN, and you should have this option Add. Let's click that. And there should be a dialog popping up that I have to accept that I've added. And I guess it's not asking me every time now. If you have a dialog pop up, just press OK. So now we have these options: SVN Update, SVN Commit, and the Tortoise menu. So let's commit our change. This will say all the changes on my local copy push to the central server. So this window pops up. We have a list of all the files I've added or changed or deleted, and we just have something with a check mark. This says we want to push this. Now this block up here is for a message. You need something saying who's editing, a little dash or a space just for legibility, and then you need a detailed message. Now hopefully with our file names the messages will never be this vague, but this is an example. So down at the bottom, just press OK. Commit is finished. It'll have added, modified, deleted, whatever you've done to the files. It'll have each file listed. Then at the bottom it'll have the revision number. So when this updates, sometime soon, there we go. Now we have a green check mark on something. So this is in the repository and it's up to date. Now this is Workspace B. If I go back into Workspace A, we can see it's still empty. So whoever's using Workspace A, they don't have these changes. So what they have to do, and what you have to do every time to make sure that your workspace is up to date, is in your workspace, right click, you choose this option, SVN Update. This updates your local copy to whatever the repository has. So we see not much has changed, but new file is added. Now we're at revision 6 or version 6. Now these numbers are for the entire repository. If I change this text file, that adds to the number. If I had a separate text file, the second text file, adding it to the repository would up the number, but this something text file doesn't necessarily change. So just something to keep in mind, that your files aren't necessarily out of date. The whole server has to be updated at once. So now, Workspace A, documentation, we have something. Now, let's say whoever's using this Workspace A is user A. They go through, they see what these new files are, something interesting. Now, they want to modify a file, do some editing. Something changes. They save their changes. Now you notice this icon changed from green to red. This little red exclamation point here, that says that your version has changes compared to the server. So what you have to do is commit your changes to the server. So Workspace A, we got those changes. Workspace B, they're still on the old version over here. Changes haven't been pushed yet. So any place in Workspace A, commit those changes. Little message. Now all these files in here and folders, this is the entire contents of the workspace. Nothing else has changed, so we just have this one file checked. And this time shows modified. So press OK. Modified something. Completed revision 7. Now Workspace A says, hey, your local changes are up on the repository, you're all good. So if we go into Workspace B, try opening it, we still got the old version. What's wrong here? Well, Workspace B hasn't actually pulled the changes from the repository. So every time you open your workspace or start working, you need to choose this option, SVN Update. This updates your workspace to the server version. Now we have our changes. Now most of what we're going to do is adding and modifying files, so that covers most things. The other things that could happen, if I accidentally add something I shouldn't, or I add something in the wrong place, we may have to delete a file. So let's add something that we shouldn't. We can just leave this blank. Mark for addition. Commit the addition. And yes, my messages are getting worse and worse every time. Now, everybody has this copy of this bad file. Well, we don't want that. So if you right-click on the file, go down to the TortoiseSVN menu. Right here, you have a few options. Delete gets it out of the repository. Rename if you just misnamed it. So we don't want this. Let's delete it. Now it disappears. Since you can't actually see the file, since you're deleting it, you have to remember that change has not been pushed to the repository. Workspace A, it's been deleted, but it's still in B. And right now, Workspace A is updated. Hey, something's changed in this folder. You can't see what it is because it's deletion, but something is different. So let's commit. Now this time we have deleting. Now the beauty of this is, well, if I update this, I go in there, I'm not going to see anything. I won't see the bad file anymore. So you may wonder, well, how do I know something wasn't added and deleted? Inside your workspace, right-click in the TortoiseSVN menu, you have the log. The log will show everything that has changed, all the way back to the first time the server was made. So we have, you can click on these different revision numbers and you'll actually be able to see the message and all the files that were in it. So we have the initial upload of everything. Some random change, something really important being added. I just use Gil as an example here. Now on revision 5, I had to restart the recording, so I deleted the workspace and deleted all the files I added. And you can see these little icons here will show you this was a modification, this was addition, this was deletion. You can see what happens with every revision number, along with who's doing it. I don't know why this is showing Bob. Oh, yes I do, actually. That's something from Unreal Engine, don't worry about it. But you have your date, and since we're not using an actual server software, we're just using Tortoise for the server, the authors is just going to be whoever's logged in on the computer. So you need to put your name over in the message, because this is just going to be your student ID number, which for most people is gibberish, unless you just know everyone's student ID number. So, alright, this is interesting. I can read all the logs. I'm done with that. Let's close it. Now, you have a bunch of other options. A couple of them to note: get lock and release lock. I haven't shown you yet, but if two users, if I open this in a new window, so now we have A on the left and B on the right. Oh. So, squeeze that in. So if these were two users on two separate PCs, so user A makes some changes and saves it. User B, they make some changes on their version and save it. Neither one of these is showing the changes that the other person has made, because the central server doesn't see the changes until you commit them. So user A commits. Now when user B tries to commit his changes, there's an error. So we have the commit failed. This document is out of date. See, while user B was doing his typing, user A has already updated it. So Tortoise sees that this file is already too old. So we have to update the version first. So now what you're going to want to do most of the time is click cancel, manually move this file somewhere, and then re-download it so you have the updated file and the file you changed, and you can compare them. Tortoise is a little weird if you try and merge the two. So now you see we have all these extra files, and it's still waiting on a change. So now what happens if I open that? We just have the actual changes that were made. So Tortoise does actually do it sometimes. If you try and merge them, it does weird formatting, like this. Now, most of the files we're working with are going to be binary files, so this type of stuff will corrupt the file. So don't try and do this. Just cancel the operation, and I'm just going to delete all of these and update my repository. So now this is pulling the change from the actual server into my local copy. I can see what's changed. This is where I say make a copy of what you've just done somewhere else outside of this repository workspace. That way you can manually go in and look, because most things aren't going to be text files. They're going to be Unreal assets or Maya files or something like that. Now, if you want to prevent this, if something is really important and you need to make absolutely sure no one else messes with it while you're editing, what you can do is right-click on a file. In the Tortoise menu, you can lock the file. And this is going to open up a little dialog here. Enter a message of why you're locking. And this should be a good reason. So now the file is locked. So now, if user A, everything's up to date, tries to edit the file, and commit the changes, won't let him commit. The file is locked. No matter what you do, you cannot commit changes to a locked file. So it'll just keep throwing you back there. So let me erase those changes. Nope, won't erase them. Oh, anyway. User B, when they're done, whatever they're messing with, release lock will unlock the files. And you can have multiple files locked and it'll show all of them. Now, you have to be very careful with locking files. Because we don't have a central manager for usernames or passwords or anything, if you lock a file and log in on a different computer, it may not see you're the same person, because only the person who locked the file can unlock it. And that's just going to be a whole lot of trouble. So we really just need to make sure that two people aren't trying to edit the same thing, unless it's really important. Now, this is just the Windows Explorer version. Most of what we're doing where we have to worry about things like that is going to be in Unreal. Now, that's going to be a separate video because Unreal has to open and do a little bit of setup. So now you should know how to make your local copy, edit some files, add files, and anything in Windows Explorer.